Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Ripe for Reissue. And what is Ripe for Reissue? Well, this is something I'm doing by popular demand. Both recently and a while back, a few of you mentioned that I hadn't had a chance to talk about this, and I didn't because I think it existed before the YouTube channel did, although I have it sitting here in a prominent place. And here it is, the Böhm Opera Box. When I did the Karl Opera Box, a couple of you said, why don't you do the Böhm Opera Box? Well, you got a point. And so I'm doing the Böhm Opera Box, which I see is hugely out of print, which pisses me off to no end. It should always be available, or at least its contents should always be available. And some of them are, because Karl Böhm was an absolutely marvelous opera conductor. He was a true man of the theater. You know, Christa Ludwig, in her autobiography, talks about the three great conductors she worked with, who she really admired, and they were Karajan, Bernstein, and Karl Böhm. And about Karl Böhm, she said he was just the consummate theatrical conductor. He understood how to work with singers, and he wielded his forces into a beautiful ensemble. His productions are recordings generally, and we get into the details here, really are ensemble pieces. He wanted to get the right singers for the right roles and have them all pay attention to him and each other and listen to each other, and he was very self-effacing about it. He really was. He was not like Karajan, an egomaniac trying to impose his will on everyone, or Bernstein, who was just sort of a crazy genius. And, you know, he really cared about ensemble. And that's the environment in which he grew up. He grew up in the opera house, and he spent most of his life conducting opera, especially the German operas, Beethoven and Strauss and Wagner. And, you know, those were his things, and Mozart. Mozart, perhaps above all. So let's see what we have in this lovely little box. You get the box, and then there's this thing, the booklet, of course, and also, I guess appropriately, we have the swastika arrangement, because Böhm had his own issues with the Nazi party. It's not as big a swastika as the Karajan sets. Karajan gets the deluxe swastika. This is the more sort of charming and homey swastika, but, you know, we have to be fair. What's good for one is good for the other. Now, let's see what we have, shall we? How many discs is this? It's a lot. We have, let's see, I don't know, 70 or 80 discs, something like that. A big pile of them. Let's just put it that way. Maybe if it says, say something here. CD 47, 65, 66, 67, 69, 70. And there's, like, you know, discussion of Böhm's own life and things and stuff in German, and we don't pay attention to that. At least I don't. So here we are. Here's the beginning. Okay, got it. And naturally, this being like German stuff, it starts with Fidelio, with Marty Talvola, Theo Adam, James King, Gwyneth Jones, Franz Krass, Edith Mathis as Marceline. Now, the kicker is always Gwyneth Jones. You know, Böhm liked her. She was a very smart dramatic soprano who really flung herself into her roles, but her voice frayed fairly early on. But you can make allowances for it. It's a very good Fidelio, actually, I think. And it's good to hear Gwyneth Jones, you know, when she was in pretty good voice here, so it's not so bad. And the performance is just, you know, dramatic. You know, Böhm, as an orchestral conductor, had a reputation for being kind of stodgy and Kapellmeisterish, but in the theater, oh my goodness, he was usually pretty zippy. He was usually pretty quick and very exciting and always dramatic. He always knew where the climaxes were. He never missed a trick, basically. Then we have the Missa Solemnis, because it's nothing but it's operas and vocal music records. So we have the Missa Solemnis with Maria Stadter and others, Mariana Radev and Anton Dermata and Joseph Greindl, with the Berlin Phil. This is in mono, and from like 1955 or so. I don't think anybody's going to have that on their short list of great Missae Solemni, but it's a noble effort, and just not terribly thrilling as far as I'm concerned. And here's the remake with Margaret Price, Christa Ludwig, Wiesław Ochman, Marty Talvola, and the Vienna Phil. And this one is in stereo from 1975. This is pretty good. It's a really very good missa. It's one that doesn't get a lot of attention. People tend to ignore it, but it doesn't deserve any disrespect. It doesn't. It's quite good. So there you go. Okay. That's the other Missa Solemnis. Let me see how I'm doing these things. Yeah, okay. It goes like that, so I can put them all back in the correct order. Next, yes, Wozzeck. This is terrific. This is how we all learned Wozzeck if we couldn't find the Metropolis mono recording, right? This was the next one. And it's with Fischer Dieskau and Fritz Wunderlich. And let's see, who's Marie? Marie is Evelyn Lear. I mean, really a fine performance, and it was really to Böhm's credit that he learned these works and did them so persuasively. Also Lulu, but the Lulu is the incomplete Lulu, unfortunately, because it hadn't been completed when this was recorded. This is with Evelyn Lear and let's see who else, Barbara Schurler and Alice Delke and people you've never heard of. Fischer Dieskau is Dr. Schön, and anyone else famous? Joseph Greindl, of course, is Schigol. And they're very, very good performances. The Wozzeck has held up quite well. Really, really powerful stuff. And then we've got Handel's Giulio Cesare highlights. Well, it's nice of him to do them, isn't it? With Fischer Dieskau and Irmgard Siegfried. Fischer Dieskau is Cesare, which is a castrato role. And he's singing it here as a baritone. Oh, it's so completely, totally, utterly wrong in so many ways, but fun to hear for some really fine singing. And what the hell? Okay, Haydn's The Seasons. I love this performance. This is with the Wiener Sinfoniker, with Gundula Janowitz, Peter Schreier, and Marty Talvela. It's marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. And for a long time, this was also, this is the one to go to. You didn't have much choice in the seasons. And this was the A-list version, and it's held up beautifully. It's a wonderful, exciting, big band Haydn choral fiesta, and I love it still. Mahler, Kindertotenlieder, and Vorlieder, the Rückert Lieder, 4 of them anyway, with Fischer Dieskau and the Berlin Phil. I mean, Böhm didn't do much Mahler, and this was sort of it for the most part, and also the Alto Rhapsody with Christa Ludwig, which is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And that's with the Vienna Phil. Really a really fine disc. I mean, they're excellent performances. There's nothing not to like. What do we got here? Mozart, Idomeneo. And we're starting to get to the Mozart stuff. Idomeneo with Wisław Ochman, Peter Schreier, Edith Mathis, Julia Varady. 3 discs. Look at the picture. It's a, Idomeneo was something that really only came into its own with the period instrument movement, because they were able to start looking at correct texts and additions and things like that. And I think they really kind of nailed it. It's such a big, lavish, sprawling piece. And, when you weren't going to do it that way, in period instrument style, you had to cut it and chop it up. And there's some wonderful singing here. But I prefer the period instrument Idomeneos. I really, really do, just for the way that they present the opera and some of the more fiery dramatic elements that they bring to it. But it wasn't a household name in the day, and again, you have wonderful ensemble casts in all of these performances, particularly Mozart, and that gives the Böhms a special sort of patina. Which is really, really nice. You may disagree with the approach, but when you listen to it, you realize that you've got people who really care about what they're doing and are responding to each other and to him, and it's doing this, and that's really a good thing. And then we've got the Abduction from the Seraglio. I like this performance with Peter Schreier and Arlene Auger as Constanza, and Rary Grist and Kurt Mahl and Harold Neukirch, and it's just a wonderful cast and a beautiful, jolly, fun performance. I always enjoyed this. I think it's just terrific. I really do. So that's the first batch up through disc 17. So let's stick it back in its swastika here. Hang on a moment. Wait a second. There we go. That goes there. Okay. So then we have to get to, let's see, 18. Is that where we are? Yes, 18 through 20. That's this one. This is all Mozart, this particular limb. We have Figaro. Oh, I grew up with this one. I adore this performance of Figaro. Fischer Dieskau, Janowitz, Edith Mathis, Hermann Pride, Tatiana Troyanos, Patricia Johnson. How is it going to get better? for casting. Really. And it's not a slow or trudgy performance at all. It's vibrant and spicy and, oh my God, it's just beautiful. The singing is glorious. It's just amazing. Absolutely wonderful. Don Giovanni, again, Fischer Dieskau, Marty Talville, Birgit Nielsen as Donna Anna, and Peter Schreier and Martina Arroyo as Donna Elvira. I mean, Ezio Flagello as Leporello. Rary Grist is in there again as Zerlina. I just love hearing the singers. Opera is about singers. I keep saying, not about conductors unless they get in the way and wreck it. And Böhm really did this. Now, this is not one of the Don Giovannis that most people are sort of drooling over, largely because Fischer Dieskau is not really, he's too thoughtful for Don Giovanni. And Don Giovanni needs, I think, a different vocal color in some ways. Something a little spookier and a little bit more, I don't know, carefree, maybe, than Fischer Dieskau allows himself to be. But you have to remember, Don Giovanni isn't about Don Giovanni. It's about everybody else. I mean, Don Giovanni has very little to do in Don Giovanni. All things considered, he only gets, a duet and one little aria, the champagne aria. Everyone else is, reflected in him. And they get they create his character by their reactions to what he does. And the supporting cast is amazing. So this is just fun. And it's the orchestra of the National Theatre of Prague. It's the original cast orchestra. Wow, baby. So that's really nice to have. And then we've got the other Don Giovanni, his later remake, with Cheryl Milnes and Anna Tomova-Sintoff and Peter Schreier and Teresa Zilesgara and Walter Berry and John McCurdy as the commendatore and Edith Mathis as Zerlina. I like the early one better, which is so typical. I think that it's more dramatic and a little bit more exciting. But it's good to hear Cheryl Milnes getting a chance to take a shot at the thing, and why not? It's fun. Let's see. Così fan tutti. Now, the great Böhm Così is the EMI one. He recorded it at least 3 times. There's a Decca one, there's a DG one, and there's the EMI one. And that's the one everybody recommends. And I agree. It just has, for the ensemble, again, for that just amazingly intimate interchange between all the characters. It's simply lovely. This one is not bad. It's pretty heavily cut. Really heavily cut. It's only on 2 discs. It's with, Gundula Janowitz and Birgitta Fassbender and Peter Schreier and Hermann Prey and Mary Grist and Rolando Panerai. And it's live. It's live from Salzburg, the Salzburg Festival in 1974. And like so many live performances, it may have been good on stage, but it hasn't translated all that well to disc, at least compared to Böhm's other recordings of the same work. So that's one I would be hesitant about to recommend. And we have the Zauber Floaty. Here it is, the Magic Flute. Let's see, this is Franz Krass, Roberta Peters as the Queen of the Night. She was a little screechy at that point in her career. And even though she was past her prime, I have a certain affection for Roberta Peters. I remember her appearing when I was a little kid on Wonderama, describing how opera singers do their thing. And I think she sang some of the Queen of the Night or something like that. I mean, of all things, it was a Sunday morning kids show. And it had special guest stars. And I remember her showing exercises singers had to do to lubricate their vocal cords. And she laid back on this like back bend thing and screamed. And I thought it was just marvelous. So what else have we got? Let's see. Evelyn Lear is Pamina and Fritz Wunderlich and Fischer Dieskau. I mean, it's a great cast. And if the Queen of the Night screeches a little bit, well, what can you do? It's all right. I've heard many screechy Queens of the Nights. Think about Karen Ott for Karajan in his digital remake. I mean, she's much screechier than Roberta Peters. So, yeah, it's a very good magic flute. And you get Die Schauspieldirektor with Rary Grist, Arlene Auger, Peter Schreier, and Kurt Mahl. And that is a gem. Oh, my goodness. It's just a gem, and it's like a little secret thing tucked into the end there. And we have La Clemenza di Tito. Very good performance of La Clemenza di Zito di Tito, yes. With Peter Schreier, Julia Verity, Edith Mathis, Teresa Berganza. Yay! I mean, wonderful, wonderful people with the Staatskapelle Dresden. Yes! Lovely, lovely performance. And, the opera's hopeless, but the arias are so great. We don't care. And the Mozart Requiem with Edith Mathis, Julia Hamari, Wiesław Ochman, Karl Ritterbusch, the Vienna Phil. Who cares? I just don't like the Mozart Requiem. I mean, it's fine. Okay, that's me. Next, we come to our Strauss. And there's lots and lots of Strauss. Oh, baby, there's lots of Strauss. Now, there are the videos that he did, and also the actual the actual recordings. Now, Böhm was a Strauss disciple. Strauss dedicated Daphne to him. He conducted Strauss all his life. He conducted Strauss more or less like Strauss. I actually think that Böhm was a rather boring conductor of Strauss's orchestral works, but he was a wonderful conductor of the operas. That's where it's just sort of remarkable. And here we have Salome with, Richard Kazili and Mignon Dunn as Herodias and Gwyneth Jones as Salome. I have to confess, I don't find Gwyneth Jones to be the most persuasive Salome, and I really prefer the video with Teresa Stratas and Astrid Varney, who, when you see them in profile, kind of look like mother and daughter in a creepy and grotesque way. So, it has its weirdness as a production, of course, but that's the Böhm Salome I would go for over this one. Although there's nothing terrible about it. It's just, it's more fun to watch it. And then we've got Electra. Ha! Oh, this is fun. This is a wonderful Electra. Jean Madeira as Clytemnestra. Inga Bork. Marianne Scheck, Fritz Uhl, and Fischer Dieskau as Orest. And the cool thing about this is that it has cuts. Yay! These days it's considered, anathema to do Electra with the cuts. But Böhm did it the way the productions went. And the little cuts, they work quite well, and it's really fun to hear Inga Bork screaming and shrieking and carrying on like a lunatic. It's always, we don't have many opportunities to do that. She didn't record all that much. Remember, she did Salome and Electra excerpts, I think, with Reiner. Wasn't that Inga Bork, too? I think it was, or some of them. Anyway, it's a beautiful performance. I think was this live or not? No, it's not. Okay, fine. It's also with the Staatskapelle Dresden, which was Böhm's orchestra and Strauss's favorite orchestra, and it's just great. So Electra is definitely worth having. Rosenkavalier, we get two of them now. Now this one, let's see, what is this one from? Let's see, about 1959 in stereo, with Marianne Scheck as the Feldmarschallin, and Kurt Böhme, and Irmgard Seefried, and Fischer Dieskau, and Rita Streich, and, all those people. Sieglinde Wagner is in here as Anina. It's a beautiful Rosenkavalier. It really is. It got overwhelmed by the Schwarzkopf Karajan EMI one back in the day when it came out. But again, I am always persuaded by really good ensemble casting, which this has. So I enjoy it. And then we have this one. Wait a minute. This is another Rosenkavalier. This is the Salzburg Festival Live one from '69. Yeah, with Krista Ludwig and Theo Adams, and Adam and Tatiana Troyanos and Edith Mathis, and all the usual people. It's live. It has the issues that live performances have, but it's good to hear these live things, to hear just how dynamic Karl Böhm was as a conductor in live circumstances. I am not such a fan of Rosenkavalier that I have the patience to sit through multiple versions of the same thing in close proximity. And I prefer his studio version. I really do, or the first one, whichever one, that one is. Then we've got Ariadne auf Naxos, two of these. It's unbelievable. This is the, Vienna State Opera. Yeah, this is what it is from, this is the mono one from 63? It's 63 here, but I don't understand why. And it's with Maria Reining and Irmgard Siegfried, or 53. No, 63. It was live recording from 1944. Thank you. They only issued it in 63. So it's 1944, and it's with Reining and Siegfried and Paul Schiffler and Max Lawrence and Alda Noni and people like that. And it's interesting for its period. We all know when 1944 was and what was going on in 1944 at the Vienna Staatsoper. So, that may rule it out of court for some people, and I don't blame you. Then we've got this next Ariadne auf Naxos. This is live from the Salzburg Festival in 1954 with Lisa Della Casa, Irmgard Seefried, Hilda Gooden, Ralph Schuck, Paul Schiffler, and others. Let me see, who's what's her name? Zerminetta, yeah, Hilda Gooden. I like this one quite a bit. Again, it's in mono, and if you get it for the singers. Frankly, the fact that Karl Böhm is there is a good thing. He keeps everybody together. He doesn't draw attention to himself. But these are these things you get because you just want to hear the singers in those particular roles, and they're fun to hear for that reason. Then we've got the stereo Ariadne of Naxos. Can't have too many of those, can we? We have another one? No, thank God. All right. This is with Hildegard Hillebrecht, Tatiana Troyanos, Rary Grist, Jess Thomas, Fischer Dieskau, Franz Stoss. I mean, it's probably the one most people would rather hear if you have a choice. It's, like I said, from 1970. Does it say that? Yes, with Bavarian Radio. And it's a lovely Ariadne of Naxos. I love Ariadne of Naxos. I mean, I could listen to this thing endlessly because it's just so much fun. It really is. It's such a clever and witty piece. But there you go. And then we've got Die Frau und Schatten. Now, this is the live Wiener Staatsoper 1977 recording, cut to ribbons. Cut. How many CDs is it? Let me see. Does it get it all on 2? No, 51, 52. Okay, it's on 3 discs, thank God. Now, Böhm always did it with cuts. And the cuts are actually, when you hear it, they sound perfectly reasonable. However, the stereo 1950s Decca Frau und Schatten with, Leni Rieseneck and those people, that they all volunteered to do because they felt the work was so important it needed a recording. That's the one to get. I mean, this is nice to have. It really is. I mean, again, and it's live and it's interesting but the sound is a little more iffy. And I just think that Decca recording is priceless. Böhm is really competing with himself here. And it's a question of casting. You have James King, Leni Rieseneck, who was the Empress, and Ruth Hesse is the nurse, and let's see, who else do we get? Leni Rieseneck does a few things. Lotte Rieseneck, pardon me, that's her sister or whatever, Walter Berry. Birgit Nielsen is, the dyer's wife. I mean, it's great to have Birgit Nielsen, of course, because she's not on that Decca one, but what the hell? Wonderful stuff. Wonderful stuff. Now we have the rest of the Richard Strauss and then the Wagners. Arabella, this is from 1947. I think Arabella is just awful. I can't help it. I don't care who's conducting it. It's such an unpleasant plot, and the music has its beauty. It's Strauss. It has beautiful moments. But if you think I care about the fiacre Millie and what's happening at the ball and whether the guy gets his glass of water, I mean, I just don't have the patience for it. Die Schweigsame Frau. This is a Salzburg Festival 1959 one, mono, with Hans Hodder and Georgine von Milinkovic, Hermann Prey, Fritz Wunderlich, Hilde Guden. Other people. Actually, I shouldn't be nice and say who's in this Arabella. It's George Hahn and Rosette Ande and Maria Reining and Lisa Della Casa and Hans Hotter and Horst Taubman and Julius Patzak. I mean, it's great people, great singing, but the opera is just insufferable. Daphne, one of Böhm's great recordings. It's live. It was dedicated to him. It's in stereo. It's 1964 from the Wiener Festwochen with the Wiener Symphoniker with Paul Schiffler, Vera Little, Hilde Guden, Fritz Wunderlich, James King, Kurt Equeluz, Hans Braun. And, Daphne is a beautiful work. It really is. It's really a little masterpiece, a pastoral miniature opera that's just beautiful. The transformation scene at the end is, God's gift to gorgeous vocal writing. It's really, really fabulous. And, this is one of the great recordings that Böhm did, and it was dedicated to him, and he had a proprietary interest in it, and good for him. And then Capriccio. Okay, so this is with Gundula Janowitz, Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, Peter Schreier, Hermann Prey, Karl Ritterbusch, Tatiana Troyanos, Arlene Auger. I mean, the cast is just to die for. And everybody goes for the Sawallisch Capriccio, which is in mono because it has Elizabeth Schwarzkopf and whatnot. And I like this one better. I think the singing's better. I think the conducting is better. I think it just gets through it with far more loving detail and knowing wit and subtlety. And this Janowitz is the Countess. Oh my God, she's beautiful. Fantastic. Okay, The Flying Dutchman. Karl Ritterbusch, Gwyneth Jones. This is the screechier Gwyneth Jones in Senta's Ballad. She sort of sort of woofs and huffs through it. It doesn't get it for me. Hermann Esser, Sieglinde Wagner, Harold Eck, Thomas Stewart as the Dutchman. And this is live from 1971. I don't think it's a great Flying Dutchman. You may disagree with me, as a performance. And, but then again, I don't think it's a great opera anyway. But still, the overture is the best part. Let's not kid ourselves. Then we've got Tristan. The Tristan. This is one of the all-time great Tristans. It's my favorite Tristan. Why? Because Böhm treats it as an opera. He treats it like a real red-blooded, exciting opera. He doesn't make it a philosophical treatise. It's not a Schopenhauerian disquisition. It is an opera with characters who are screaming and yelling and shrieking and dying and going for it. And it's wonderful. The cast is unbeatable. You've got Wolfgang Windgassen as Tristan and Marty Talvel as King Mark and Birgit Nielsen as Isolde. Oh my God, gee whiz. Eberhard Fechter is Kurvenal, and Claude Heater is Merlot, or Melot, whatever his name is. And Christa Ludwig is Brangena, which she did better than anybody. Oh, it's just unbelievable. The young seaman is Peter Schreier. It's the Bayreuth Festival, 1966. It's for me, it's the one. It just blows my mind. Okay, then we've got a Met Opera Gala, and then, a bunch of things talking about Karl Böhm, A Life Retold, which is, he speaks in German, which is very helpful if you don't speak German. And then he speaks to the press on the completion of his recording of Don Giovanni in Prague, or something like that. There's all this stuff in here. Okay, fine. I don't pay any attention to that stuff. You may want to. There it is. You may find it interesting, or more interesting than I do. But that's it. 70 discs. 70 discs. They all go back into their little swastika pouches. And we have the Karl Böhm Opera Box, which never should have been allowed to go out of print. There is so much great stuff in here. And it's not just that the performances are great from the conductor's standpoint. Like I said, they are documents of an era of a type of ensemble casting that you really don't see anymore. You just don't see it. You don't have that kind of corporate dedication to the cause, I think. It's all just people zipping around and flying in and doing something and flying out again. So I think this is a very, very important set, a very beautiful set, a wonderful tribute to an extraordinary operatic conductor. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.